Beatrice Fenlow was still wearing the apron she had used to feed 3 generations of Harvestmoon families when Alpha King Lucan Harrowmere ordered it stripped from her before the hungry families. Granary Master Orson Calder handed the shears to a royal guard. "Remove the certified keeper's apron," Orson said, his voice gentle enough to sound merciful. "Until the shortage is reconciled, Mistress Fenlow cannot stand before the ration tables." The guard hesitated. Beatrice did not. She untied the lower office cord and lifted her chin while the blade cut through the shoulder strap. More than 80 hungry people waited beneath the timber arches of Harvestmoon Pack Granary. The patched linen carried faded measuring knots authenticated against Harvestmoon's founding scales. They certified what she could lawfully issue. Old transfer law warned that authenticated knots left open against an unreconciled foundation count could call founding grain through the measuring channels. No unresolved measure return had been recorded in 4 generations. Emergency law allowed Lucan to suspend her keys and sever the office strap. But the last certified keeper retained the apron under witnessed restriction until the closing count fixed the final measure. She could not issue from it, alter its knots, enter a bin, or carry it beyond the granary evidence rail. Only after the knots were formally closed could the apron enter divided evidence custody. That count had not begun. Beatrice had worn the apron through 31 winters. She and Lucan had met as adults during Harvestmoon's first siege winter, working the ration table as equals. Years later, she had left meals outside his war room. He remembered and still let the strap fall. Orson opened the shortage ledger. 700 grain measures entered the east bins after threshing. 500 remain by sealed foundation count. Approved household issue accounts for 162. 38 measures have not been reconciled. The preliminary total came from foundation scales beneath the bins. No latch had been opened for a physical count. Pack law allows 8 measures for chaff, sweepings, broken kernels, milling dust, and moisture loss, Beatrice said, only when entered before final audit. My private notes account for 6 measures turned into broth and meal, for households outside the approved roll. For hungry households, Orson remained composed. Compassion does not replace release authority. No, Beatrice said. I recorded every mouth. I did not obtain every release. Orson gestured to 3 cloth bags on the evidence table. They had been taken from Beatrice's cottage during a witnessed emergency search. Their cords remained sealed. Together, they weighed 2 grain measures. Pack law forbids a keeper from holding crown grain privately. Chaff, heavy sweepings for the dawn broth pot, Beatrice said. The granary chimney failed, so my cottage hearth became the winter substitute. Was that substitution entered? Not for the last 3 mornings. Then you removed grain without final release. I moved what your forms call loss and fed people your roll refused. Orson turned 1 page. Even if the full 8-measure allowance is accepted, 30 measures remain unexplained. Beatrice faced Lucan. Then investigate 30 measures. Do not pretend my breach accounts for all 38. Lucan stood beneath the Alpha's iron circlet, his grey wolf restless behind his eyes. Did you issue grain outside the approved roll? He asked. I used unentered loss allowance for people your officers rejected. That was not the question. You are using my 8 measures to answer for 30 more. Orson lowered his gaze, allowing their history to become part of the suspicion. This hearing must remain about records. You made it about my character when you cut off the apron, Beatrice said. Lucan descended from the platform. For one breath, she thought he might pick it up. Instead, he stopped between her and the waiting families. The shortage justifies temporary key and bin suspension. The full inventory will proceed at moonrise under the appointed measurers and noble witnesses, and the 2 household observers, named by shortage law, Orson answered. They may observe beyond the weighing rail once the formal opening begins. Then enter them now. Lucan did not amend the witness order. Until the inventory is completed, he said. Beatrice Fenlow is suspended from every key, bin, and ration table. Decades of dawn counts vanished in one sentence. Orson bowed. A necessary protection for her as well as the pack. Beatrice looked at Lucan. Protection would have been separating my 8 measures from the 30 you have not explained. I have not declared you guilty. You let them undress my work before the Count could speak. Lucan reached toward the fallen apron. Beatrice lifted it herself. You do not return dignity with the same hand that permitted it to be cut away. His arm fell. A neutral scale witness recorded the garment under restricted keeper custody. Beatrice could hold it. She could not use it. Guards pressed royal cross seals over the east bin latch bars without breaking the keeper's earlier wax. Both sets remained whole. Orson ordered the moonrise inventory prepared. Beatrice folded the severed apron over both hands and stepped away from the ration tables, stopping inside the evidence rail. A small girl reached toward her from the public side. The child's mother pulled her back, fear tightening her face. Then something struck the inside of the east bin. Once. Again. Both sets of seals held. A dry whisper moved through the old measuring channels. Kernels threaded through seams no wider than a quill and crossed the stone against the floor's slope. The response required more than a cut strap. Open, authenticated knots, an unreconciled foundation count, founding grain still linked to the channels, and no lawful successor. No one touch it, Beatrice said. Orson raised one hand to halt the guards. An unresolved measure return may indicate an incomplete transfer, he said. It does not determine which count is correct. No, Beatrice said. So preserve it. Silver-gold streams divided around scale legs, boots, and every obstacle in their path. This was a measure response, not a verdict. Beatrice remained still. The first stream did not turn toward her body. It turned toward the severed hem in her hands. The kernels gathered beneath the faded measuring knots that had not yet been lawfully closed. Behind her, the sealed east bins groaned as more harvest grain entered the unfinished measure. Beatrice ordered the foundation scales locked before anyone called the moving grain a verdict. Lucan sealed the adjustment wheel with royal wax, while Orson ordered the guards back from the granary evidence rail. The grain, already on the stone, stays separate, Beatrice said. No sweeping, no mixing it with what comes next. A measuring cord was laid around the silver-gold spill beneath the apron. Certified scoops transferred it into a neutral basin marked Opening Floor Collection. Loose dust passed through the standard grain screen. The basin held 1/2 grain measure. The scale clerk opened the ledger. The last east bin reading entered before the unresolved. Measure response was 500 measures. At the moment Lucan's wax closed over the adjustment wheel, the live reading stood at 499 1/2. Each old measuring channel received its own basin, weighed empty before placement. Start time, end time, and net weight would be entered for every stream. The original keeper's wax and the royal cross seals were examined again. Neither had cracked. The east bin latches remained closed. No one crosses the evidence rail, Lucan said. Not guards, nobles, or household witnesses. Beatrice held the severed apron beneath the scale witness's gaze. Its authenticated knots remained open. I can hold it, she said. I cannot issue from it, alter it, or carry it beyond this boundary. Orson nodded. Once the response stabilizes, it enters divided custody. When the measurements say stable, Beatrice replied, not when the room becomes impatient. 2 registered household representatives took the lawful observer position beside the weighing rail, outside the evidence boundary. They could see each seal inspection, basin transfer, and called weight, but could not touch evidence or operate the scales. Lucan looked toward Beatrice. The order now includes them. You knew shortage law included them before I asked. Yes. Along the foundation frame, dormant brass indicators marked old transfer lines no longer used. Each had been fixed at 0 during the preliminary count. Orson watched the channels instead of Beatrice. An unfinished stewardship can produce a return, Even if the shortage figure is accurate, he said, the grain may be answering the open knots rather than revealing missing stock. Record that, Beatrice said, before anyone makes me innocent by magic. Lucan's jaw tightened. You think I would mistake this for acquittal? You made me guilty by spectacle before the count. I will not accept vindication by spectacle either. The first post-lock basin weighed 1 1/4 measures. The next held 2. Each result was entered before the grain moved to secured collection jars. No basin was combined until its separate weight and channel position had been recorded. At 4 measures, Orson stopped the next transfer. Test both scale systems. Certified stones held within the required tolerance on the floor balance. Lucan's wax over the adjustment wheel remained unbroken. The permitted combined variance is 1/4 measure, the scale clerk said. Record only the accessible test points, Orson replied. Do not declare machinery sound where we have not opened it. Beatrice inclined her head. Correct. The cottage bags were brought forward under their original search seals. 2 neutral witnesses matched the cords and wax to the inventory record. The emptied cloth, cords and seals were weighed first and deducted. The contents totaled 2 grain measures. 1 bag held chaff and broken kernels. The second was heavy with husk and mill sweepings. The third contained usable grain mixed through ash-grey loss material. A grain grader compared them with samples from the current harvest lot. Lower-grade remnants, she said. The composition supports sweepings and milling loss. It does not establish lawful release. Orson entered the finding without objection. The bags support her explanation in part, he said. They do not erase the failure to record removal. No, Beatrice answered. Seal that beside my notes. Her private ration book was wrapped separately from the shortage ledger. It listed 6 measures, all issued outside the approved roll. Together, the notes and net cottage contents accounted for the provisional 8-measure loss allowance. They did not explain the remaining 30. Lucan looked down at the household names. You should have brought these refusals to me. I filed 3 winter petitions through your household office. None received a hearing before the ration roll closed. You could have asked for me directly. Your office received them. Access is not the same as being heard. The Alpha remained silent. The channel flow thinned. No one declared it finished by sight alone. The scale witness required 3 consecutive readings. After the third unchanged reading, she declared the immediate response stable. Beatrice surrendered the apron. The scale office received 1 custody key. The household representative selected 1 key witness, and her office designation was entered beside the second lock. Beatrice's granary keys remained suspended. The moonrise inventory remained scheduled. The final arithmetic was read aloud. The opening floor basin held 1/2 measure. The post-lock channel basins held 8 3/4. Total collected 9 1/4 measures. The East Bin Foundation reading had fallen from 500 to 492 1/4. 7 3/4 measures had left the recorded East Bin load. The collected grain exceeded that decline by 1 1/2 measures, 6 times the permitted combined variance. Lucan looked toward Orson. Then the excess did not register against the East Bins. Not against the recorded East Bin load, Orson corrected. That does not yet tell us where it registered. The scale clerk moved along the dormant brass indicators beneath the floor. The surface hatch of the unused transfer chute remained closed. Its dust line was unbroken. 1 indicator shifted, then held. No one touched the chute. The brass arm moved again. It proved that weight had changed somewhere along a dormant secondary transfer line. It did not identify a chamber, direction, material, or cause. Beatrice requested the original foundation map before a shifting counterweight became evidence of hidden grain. The map chest arrived beneath an intact archive seal. Lucan remained behind the witness line, while Orson, the scale clerk, and the 2 household observers watched as the lock was opened. No chute is opened until every connected chamber and seal is listed, Beatrice said. Orson nodded. Agreed. An old indicator can answer a counterweight, ventilation damper, settling beam, or stored load. Movement does not prove grain crossed the line. Then we begin with structure, not suspicion. The original foundation plan was a construction record. It showed the east bins resting on 4 load frames, with narrow measuring channels, scale cables, and service lines beneath them. The later sheet was a renovation operating plan prepared for maintenance crews after the second expansion. It simplified the system intended for daily use. Lucan looked between the drawings. Which one controls? The physical building controls, Beatrice said. The plans tell us what to inspect. Orson placed one finger beside the dormant indicator. Both sheets may be genuine and still describe different intended conditions. A drawn alteration may never have been completed. An omitted line may have remained below the floor. Genuine archive marks proved that each sheet belonged to the record chain. They did not prove that every drawn change had been built or that every omitted line had been removed. No one entered the subfloor. First, every visible seal was inventoried. The east bins remained beneath the keeper's wax and Lucan's royal cross seals. The west store carried 2 intact storage seals. The milling chamber had been lawfully opened 3 times during threshing. The reserve vault remained beneath an older double seal, neither layer disturbed. Each accessible chamber load was read through an exterior foundation arm. No latch was lifted. No storage seal was touched. None meant to yet excaned the 1 1/2 measure excess collected during the unresolved measure response. The maintenance ledger showed that the dormant indicator had passed calibration at harvest opening and returned within the accepted quarter-measure tolerance. After that? Beatrice asked. No recorded test, the clerk said. Then it functioned within tolerance at harvest opening. Its condition afterward is unknown. Orson ordered certified weights placed on the external calibration plate. The brass arm answered. But its return was slow. Friction in the linkage, he said. That delay can distort timing or make the source of a load change appear later than it was. Can it create additional collected weight? One household observer asked. No, Beatrice said. It can confuse where a load change began. It cannot place grain in a basin. The woman looked toward the secured collection jars. Then the basins remain the stronger fact. Yes, the finding entered the record. Beatrice's keys remained suspended. The certified apron stayed beneath divided custody. Her private ration book and the opened cottage bags remained separately sealed. The moonrise inventory was still scheduled. At Beatrice's request, the clerk produced the certified kitchen salvage and grain quality ledger from the Granary kitchen archive. Its cord, season mark, and archive seal were verified before the book was opened. Beatrice's entries carried her keeper's mark, beside same-day kitchen countermarks. For 6 winters, she had logged damp pockets, cracked kernels, and grain unfit for ration sacks but still safe for boiling. Each lawful entry recorded quantity, meal yield, preparation date, and kitchen destination. Lucan recognized her handwriting, but the countermarks established when the entries had been made. 11 uses of your cottage hearth appear this winter, Orson said. 8 were entered through the official kitchen salvage account, Beatrice replied. The clerk confirmed it. Those quantities had already been reconciled in the official kitchen account and did not enlarge the shortage. The last 3 mornings? Orson asked. The unentered bags already under seal. The 3 mornings remained part of the established 8-measure breach. They did not create another quantity of missing grain. Orson turned several pages. The lawful entries list meal yield, but not every person who received broth. Communal salvage entries require quantity and meal count, Beatrice said. Not household names. You kept the measures lawful and the recipients outside review. I withheld names, not measures. You prevented the office from checking their eligibility. Under the rule then in force, listing a refused household as receiving unauthorized Crown ration stock would have closed its pending appeal. Her choice remained outside approval. It did not alter the quantities already entered in the kitchen account. Lucan studied the quality entries. You recognized the shortage risk before the council entered it. I recorded light kernels, brittle husks, and rising damp loss. I filed yield, risk warnings, and requested an early count. Did those warnings reach the Winter Council? Orson answered without changing expression. They were classified as quality concerns because no completed winter count accompanied them. I requested the count that would have supplied it, Beatrice said. Her authority extended to filing yield risk warnings, documenting loss, and requesting an early count. It did not extend to declaring famine, freezing sales, or imposing shortage status. The council record contains none of these meal yield calculations, Lucan said. The hungry carried the risk, Beatrice replied. I kept the figures. He did not ask her to forgive what he had failed to see. The Foundation inquiry continued. The original construction plan showed the dormant indicator serving two destinations, the West Store and a narrow reserve side branch. The renovation operating plan showed only the West Store. Orson examined both archive marks again. Both are genuine. Is there a removal certificate? Lucan asked. None attached, the clerk said. A sealing or rerouting entry? None. Beatrice asked for the amendment field. The clerk turned the operating plan over. The space where any removal, sealing, rerouting, abandonment, or deliberate omission should have been recorded was blank. One valid plan showed two branches. The later valid plan showed one. No record showed whether the second branch had been removed, sealed, rerouted, or merely omitted from the working plan. Beatrice requested the renovation work order before an omitted line became proof of a hidden passage. The archive clerk brought 4 sealed records to the weighing rail. The renovation authorization, contractor work order, guild measurement sheet, and completion certificate. All 4 carried the same Harvestmoon Second Expansion Foundation project number and foundation site code. Their dates formed a lawful sequence. Authorization first, the work order 6 days later, guild measurements at construction's close, and completion certification after inspection. Their project references matched, their certified scopes did not. Lucan remained behind the witness line. The 2 household observers watched as each cord, archive mark, and packet seal was examined before the records were opened. Orson stood beside the scale clerk, his expression unchanged. No floor is sounded from inside a storage chamber, Beatrice said. We begin from the public service corridors. Orson inclined his head. And no hollow response becomes a grain route merely because it lies beneath a granary. Agreed. The renovation authorization had been issued after the second expansion, when the West Store was added and the foundation system simplified for daily maintenance. Its instruction was precise. Deactivate. Reserve side transfer branch. Seal at Foundation Junction. Retain West Store line for load balancing and service access. Lucan looked toward the operating plan. Then the reserve side closure was authorized. Intended, Beatrice said. We still need proof of completed work. The contractor work order listed stone closure, iron bracing, West Store recalibration, and general foundation work. The reserve side closure appeared inside the general stonework section rather than under its own measured line. Orson turned the page back. That may mean the junction was sealed as part of the general foundation work, or that the task was authorized without being separately measured, Beatrice replied. The document does not choose between them. The guild measurement sheet gave finished dimensions for the West Store corridor, calibration, recess, and public service channel. Its line stopped 3 feet before the former junction shown on the original foundation plan. No dimensions beyond this point, Lucan said. No recorded dimensions, Beatrice corrected. He accepted the distinction. The completion certificate confirmed the West Store supports, replacement calibration plate, and 2 new balance cables. It carried a genuine guild seal and archive intake mark. It did not separately certify the reserve side junction. One household observer leaned closer. "Does that mean it was left open?" "No," Beatrice said. "It means this certificate does not tell us," Orson added. "The closure may have been completed under general stonework. The branch may also have been filled, collapsed, or abandoned without leaving a usable opening." Each possibility entered the record. The household observers received every page reference and called dimension. Beatrice's keys remained suspended. The certified apron stayed under divided custody. Her cottage evidence and private ration book remained separately sealed. The Moonrise inventory remained active. Every storage chamber remained closed. A non-invasive exterior foundation survey began from the public service corridor. Before testing any unknown area, the clerk sounded the documented West Store service line. Calibrated rods and weighted depth lines returned the depth and density shown on the guild sheet within the accepted 2-inch tolerance. Only then did the survey move beyond the endpoint drawn on the renovation operating plan. Stone settling, fractured fill, ventilation pockets, drainage cuts, and old cable recesses can all produce low-density readings, Orson said. "Then test continuity without naming function," Beatrice replied. The first transect was taken at the operating plan endpoint. The sounding rod returned a hollow note. A second reading, 1 foot beyond, answered at nearly the same depth. The clerk moved to a separate corridor stone 3 feet farther toward the reserve side. The third transect returned within the same guild tolerance. "What does 3 matching depths establish?" Lucan asked. "A probable subsurface feature," the clerk said. "Not an open route." Orson studied the weighted line. "The level gradient weakens a simple drainage explanation. It does not exclude a blocked or cross-running channel. A hollow is not a route unless it continues," Beatrice said. "And continuity would still not establish purpose, direction, or use," Orson replied. The distinction entered the survey record. Years ago, Beatrice's hands had corrected Lucan's siege ration tables after he counted marching soldiers but failed to separate the wounded, fevered, and recovering. "You always made the missing bodies visible," he said. "You remembered that after permitting them to cut the instrument, I used to count them. Nothing I say changes what I permitted. Then do not let words interrupt the measurements." The fourth reading was taken nearer the reserve side bearing. It returned a low-density response at the same approximate depth, though the tone was less clear. "No one marks that as a chamber," Beatrice said. The clerk wrote, "Probable structural continuation, identity unknown." Beyond the rail, one waiting woman called, "Then why were we told the count was simple?" Orson faced the families. The 30-measure discrepancy remains unresolved, whether or not an undocumented foundation feature lies beneath the floor. The structural response does not erase the inventory question, and Beatrice's 8 measures remain outside approval, another woman said. "They do," Beatrice answered. "Do not defend me by erasing what I did." Lucan faced the public side of the rail, nor will her 8 plans be used to answer for 30 more. It was the first time he had separated them before the people who watched her apron cut. Beatrice did not thank him. The final transect reached the point where the renovation operating plan ended. The sounding rod returned a hollow note. 1 foot beyond, the same response returned at nearly the same depth. At the third confirmed survey point, the guild line remained within tolerance. The renovation authorization had ordered the reserve side branch sealed. The contractor work order may have placed that task inside general foundation stonework. The completion certificate did not separately certify the junction. The guild measurement sheet stopped before it. The operating plan showed no service line beyond the West Store endpoint. The present survey detected a continuing low-density response beneath it. The finding did not prove an open passage, a chamber connection, or movement of grain. It proved only that the working plan did not fully explain the foundation beneath their feet. Beatrice requested the reserve side perimeter seals before a foundation response became permission to break stone. The reserve vault remained closed beneath its older double seal. The east bins, west store, and milling chamber also remained untouched. Lucan stayed behind the witness line while the two household observers watched every seal number called and copied. "No destructive probe," Beatrice said. "Not until the exterior junction stones, service, wall measurements, and second survey agree." Orson Calder examined the reserve vault perimeter register. "The inner and outer seals match the last lawful inspection," he said. "Neither shows lifting, heat, or replacement." "That establishes custody at the doors," Beatrice replied. "Not the condition beneath them." The distinction entered the record. The first exterior inspection began where the public service corridor met the old reserve side bearing. Renovation stonework could be identified by pale mortar and square gild cuts. Original foundation stones were darker and marked with crescent chisel strokes. A row of facing stones covered the point where the authorization had ordered the old branch sealed. "Could the closure lie behind the facing?" Lucan asked. "It could," Orson said. "The surface may cover a completed stone plug, a filled recess, or an untouched older joint. Then the facing tells us nothing alone," Beatrice said. The scale clerk measured wall thickness from the corridor and compared it with the original foundation plan. The depth exceeded the operating plan by 11 inches, still compatible with reinforcement or an old cable recess. The household observers heard each figure repeated. At Beatrice's request, a second non-invasive survey began from the exterior grain court. Guild rules required 3 matching depth responses from 2 directions before a subsurface feature could be called probable. Calibrated rods were tested first against the documented West Store service line. They matched within 2 inches. Only then were readings taken toward the reserve side junction. The first exterior transect returned a low-density response. The second answered at nearly the same depth. The third weakened, but remained within guild tolerance. Orson folded his hands behind his back. A filled branch can settle differently from surrounding stone. A collapsed recess, ventilation pocket, old cable chamber, or fractured mortar bed could produce the same bearing. "Could an open passage be concluded from these readings?" one household observer asked. "No," Beatrice said. "Could it be excluded?" "No." "Then enter both." Both were entered. The moonrise inventory bell sounded once beyond the granary doors. Orson looked toward the east bins. The physical count must still begin on schedule. Beatrice's keys remained suspended. The certified apron remained under divided custody. She held no authority to open a latch or direct the official measurers. Lucan faced the evidence clerk. "The inventory proceeds. No reserve. Sidestone is broken, and no structural finding enters the shortage count without a separate record. That requires 2 witness chains and twice the clerks," Orson said. "It also prevents an uncertain foundation response from becoming a convenient answer." Beatrice looked toward Lucan. He had not restored her. He had made his own administration carry the cost of keeping the evidence separate. "You are separating the records now," she said. "I should have separated them before your apron was cut. That statement does not close the knots." "No." He did not ask her to call the correction repair. The official measurers began the moonrise inventory under the original wax. Royal Cross seals, noble witnesses, and 2 household representatives. The first latch inspection was entered without opening the east bins yet. Beatrice remained outside the evidence boundary. At the reserve side wall, the scale clerk located an old ventilation port shown on both plans. Its iron grille was sealed to the masonry, but the narrow shaft could be measured without disturbing it. A weighted thread entered only to the lawful inspection depth. The shaft bent westward, not toward the reserve vault. "That weakens ventilation as the explanation," Lucan said. "It weakens this route," Orson corrected. "It does not eliminate an unrecorded pocket or damaged fill." Beatrice inclined her head. "Record the narrower finding." The junction stones were examined under angled lantern light. 1 pale-facing stone bore the authorized guild mark for completed foundation sealing. "Is that the closure mark?" one household observer asked. "It is the correct project mark," Orson said. Beatrice did not touch it. Where should it have been placed? The guild sheet required the mark to cross both the finished closure stone and the original foundation joint. A valid placement would show that the sealed junction itself had been inspected. The mark before them crossed no joint. It sat entirely on the removable facing stone. Lucan's wolf flashed in his eyes, but he stayed behind the line. Does that prove the junction was left open? No, Beatrice said. It proves this mark does not certify the joint behind it. The reserve vault seals remained intact. The second survey confirmed the same low-density bearing from another direction, and the only visible sealing mark certified the facing stone, but not the foundation junction concealed behind it. Beatrice required the moonrise count completed before anyone removed the marked facing stone. The east bin seals were opened in order. Keeper's wax recorded first, Royal Cross. Seals second. Latch bars third. 2 household observers watched from the weighing rail, while trained measurers emptied each compartment into certified floor bins. Lucan remained behind the witness line. Orson Calder called every weight aloud. The physical total matched the final East Bin Foundation reading within the permitted quarter-measure tolerance. Then the East Bin scales were not hiding 30 measures. One household observer said. They were not hiding them at the time of this count, Beatrice corrected. That does not tell us where the discrepancy entered the record. Orson inclined his head. Nor does it tell us that grain ever left the granary. The 9 1/4 measures collected during the unresolved measure response remained under separate seals. The 1 1/2 measure excess still had no identified load source. Only after the count was closed did Beatrice permit examination of the reserve side facing stone. The guild mark sat on its removable surface. Neutral masons lifted the stone without breaking the reserve vault seals or entering any storage chamber. Behind it lay no open tunnel. There was a narrow service recess containing an old iron collar, a balance cable, and a capped transfer throat filled with compacted stone dust. Lucan studied it from behind the line. Was the branch sealed? Partially, Orson said. The throat is filled. The balance linkage remains. Can grain pass through it? Not in its present visible condition. Beatrice looked at the untouched collar. And can the remaining linkage transmit a load change? Yes. The finding explained how the dormant indicator might respond without proving grain movement. It did not explain the collected excess. Beatrice requested the reserve allocation books. Orson's expression changed only by a fraction. Those records belong to trade administration, not household issue. 30 measures are absent from the household reconciliation, she said. Any reserve category capable of removing them from availability belongs in this inquiry. Lucan faced the archive clerk. Bring every winter allocation tied to this project code, household reserve, or external trade. Orson turned toward him. Opening commercial terms before the pack can damage salt and medicine contracts. Then unrelated prices remain sealed, Lucan said. The quantities do not. Beatrice did not thank him for correcting an obstacle he had allowed to stand. The archive packets revealed a lawful power Lucan had granted after the previous winter. The granary master could commit limited surplus grain to advance trade for salt, lamp oil, and healing bark. No shipment could reduce the household reserve below the winter safety threshold, and every commitment required a current reserve certification. My seal authorized 12 measures, Lucan said, per approved trade cycle. Orson replied. Not for the entire season. How many cycles were entered? 3. The commitment sheets totaled 30 measures. None appeared in the household shortage ledger. A household observer gripped the weighing rail. Then the grain was never missing. Do not say that yet, Beatrice said. A commitment is not proof of location. Orson opened the first sheet. The quantities were moved from household availability into protected trade reserve. That is why they do not appear as ration stock. Were they shipped? Beatrice asked. Not all. Where were unshipped commitments stored? In secured forward custody. That is a category, not a place. Orson's jaw hardened. The locations were restricted to protect winter contracts. Lucan looked at the 30-measure total. Did I receive a current household reserve certification before each cycle? The clerk searched the attached pages. The first packet contained one. The second carried a copied threshold figure but no fresh physical count. The third relied on the same figure again. Beatrice's yield risk warnings had been filed before the second and third commitments. Lucan's hand closed against the rail. You continued committing grain after her warnings. Orson remained controlled. They were quality notices, not a declared shortage. The official reserve figure remained above threshold, because the same unverified number was reused, Beatrice said. The rules permitted ledger certification when no closing count had been ordered, and your office declined the early count that would have tested it. Orson met her gaze. The request was not completed. I did not personally deny it. That limit entered the record. Lucan looked at Beatrice. My trade authority made this possible. Your authority made it permissible, she said. Your refusal to ask who went hungry made it useful. Pain crossed his face, but she gave him no comfort. The trade packets contained ration priority schedules for the reduced household reserve. Families were divided by winter service, tax standing, and oath compliance. Households with pending appeals moved to the lowest tier. The same families in Beatrice's private ration book appeared there. One observer whispered, They made the shortage decide who deserved to eat. Orson answered evenly. Priority schedules prevent panic and preserve essential service. They also turn grain into obedience, Beatrice said. The final commitment sheet had not yet been marked shipped. Its 30-measure reference matched the unresolved household discrepancy exactly. Beside the custody field stood a location code absent from the public operating plan. Beatrice asked for the trade route key. The clerk unfolded it. The code named an internal loading point beneath the granary's south foundation. Reserve side transfer, Lower Road. Beatrice refused to follow the trade route clerk beneath the south foundation, while Harvestmoon still called her suspended. The Lower Road code had entered the record. Lucan ordered the matching gate books, custody seals, and loading instructions secured before anyone approached the foundation. Orson Calder objected without raising his voice. Forward trade custody may include salt, medicine, and lamp oil exchanges. Freezing every related movement could cost the pack supplies it cannot replace. Then separate the 30 grain measures from the other contracts, Beatrice said. You know the ledgers well enough to do that. I knew them as keeper. You cut that authority from me before 80 hungry people. Lucan stood behind the witness line. I am asking you as a witness. No. You are asking me to keep doing the work after preserving the punishment. Beatrice had no apron, keys, or right to touch records without a clerk's permission, yet every official turned toward her whenever the numbers stopped making sense. She stepped away from the weighing rail. The inquiry has trained measurers, household observers, sealed records, and your authority. It does not have the right to borrow mine without restoring accountable conditions. What conditions? Lucan asked. A neutral food board, separate custody for household and trade reserves, authority for household observers to challenge ration priority, and no conclusion entered under my name, while I cannot inspect its source. Orson folded his hands. Those changes cannot be drafted before tonight's distribution. Then tonight's failures belong to the officers that designed them. Beatrice left the granary court. The apron remained under divided custody. Her ration book and cottage bags remained sealed. Her suspension remained in force. Lucan watched her walk through the public doors carrying nothing that belonged to the office she had served for 31 winters. At the evening ration bell, Harvestmoon learned how much of its food system had lived inside work no ledger named. The clerks followed the priority schedule exactly. Households with current tax standing received full portions. Winter service families received reduced portions. Pending appeal households waited until the final tier. The cracked grain broth was not prepared. No approved clerk could determine which damaged stock remained safe to boil, and no one would risk another unentered allowance. After Beatrice's hearing, 3 kettles stayed empty. By the time the lowest tier reached the tables, the measured issue was gone. No grain vanished during distribution. The rules had delivered it elsewhere first. Lucan stood beside the tables as mothers folded empty cloths over their hands. Why were the salvage kettles not filled? The kitchen clerk lowered her eyes. Mistress Fenlow made the quality separations. Without her certification, uncertain remnants must remain unused until inspection. Orson met Lucan's gaze. After an admitted reporting breach, informal grading would compromise the inventory, and leaving edible remnants unused protects the pack from contaminated stock. The position was defensible. The hunger it produced was real. A household observer approached Lucan. The low-tier families received nothing. The morning issue will be increased. With what reserve? He had no immediate answer. Across the yard, Beatrice heard the second ration bell from her cottage. It rang only when distribution closed, with households still waiting. She sat beside a cold hearth. The 2 measures of cottage sweepings remained in evidence. She would not replace Crown grain with another undocumented act, because the same families stood outside her door. When the first mother knocked, Beatrice opened it. "I have roots, dried apples, and no grain I can lawfully serve. We did not come to ask you to break another rule." More women waited behind her. One carried the ration closeout copied by the household observers. Another held the schedule that placed pending appeals last. "We want to challenge this without losing our petitions." Beatrice looked at the women whose hunger had been used first to shame her and then to control them. "Challenge the categories before the portions," she said. "Make them explain why obedience determines appetite." At the granary, Lucan ordered the 30 committed measures, frozen until physical custody could be verified. Orson warned him, "If the trade houses invoke breach, they may withhold salt and healing bark. Then I will answer for the breach. You did not create these contracts alone." "No, but my seal made the authority possible." It was the first cost he accepted without asking Beatrice to share it. He suspended the ration priority schedule for one morning and ordered equal emergency portions from verified public stock. The measure could last only 1 day. Near midnight, 6 trade wagons arrived at Harvestmoon's south gate. Their drivers carried valid advance contracts and matching payment tallies. None had entered the granary. The lead driver produced a sealed loading instruction. It ordered the 30 committed measures delivered before dawn through the lower road point beneath the south foundation. The instruction bore the correct trade office seal. Its release time had been entered 3 days before Beatrice's apron was cut. Beatrice returned to Harvestmoon only after Lucan placed the loading instruction, trade contracts, and ration priority schedule under one neutral seal. She did not return as keeper. The certified apron remained in divided custody. Her keys stayed suspended. The Moonrise inventory continued under trained measurers and household observers. Lucan stood before the public ration tables. The loading order was issued 3 days before Beatrice Fenlow's apron was cut. He said, "Her 8-measure breach did not create the 30-measure commitment, the ration schedule, or the lower road release." Orson Calder remained beside counsel from the granary office. "The timing does not establish that the commitment was improper," he said. "Trade grain may be moved before public shortage is declared." "Only if the household threshold is current," Beatrice replied. "It was certified from the standing reserve figure, a figure reused after my yield. Risk warnings and before the count you did not complete." Orson's expression did not change. "The rules permitted ledger certification, then the rules permitted hunger to hide behind paperwork." Lucan did not defend the rules. He opened the Royal Trade Authority that had allowed 3 grain commitments and placed his approval seal into evidence. "I authorized the granary master to commit surplus," he said. "I did not require a fresh physical count before each cycle. That failure belongs to my office." A trade representative warned that freezing delivery could void the salt and healing bark contracts. Lucan removed the black clasp from his winter mantle and set it beside the contract book. Value the breach against the Crown's war silver and private hunting lands. Harvestmoon's households will not pay for my correction with medicine. The room went still. Orson spoke carefully. The Crown may cover one contract. It cannot replace a permanent trade system overnight. No, Beatrice said. That is why one payment is not repair. Lucan looked at her. Name what is. She did not step nearer. A food board with authority, not ceremony. Separate ledgers for household reserve and trade reserve. 2 household representatives with access to physical counts. No priority schedule based on oath compliance, and no trade commitment using a reserve figure older than 1 watch cycle. Orson's counsel objected. You are asking the Alpha to surrender control of winter stock to people without granary training. I am asking trained measurers to count and hungry households to witness what those counts justify. Lucan ordered the terms entered. The temporary Harvestmoon food board would include 2 trained measurers, 2 household representatives, 1 kitchen salvage clerk, and 1 neutral healer responsible for hunger risk reports. Neither Alpha nor Granary Master could close its inspection alone. Beatrice's name was offered as chair. She refused. I will advise until the current count is complete. I will not accept a title from the same authority, still reviewing whether I deserve my old one. Lucan's jaw tightened. Then the seat remains empty until the board elects someone. You are learning not to fill every silence with your choice. I am trying. Trying is private. Safeguards are what the pack can use. The board suspended the ration priority tiers. Equal emergency portions were issued from verified public stock, while the trade dispute remained open. The portions were smaller than Beatrice would have given, but every waiting household received one. Lucan carried grain measures from the certified scale to the ration table under the observer's count. He did not touch Beatrice's apron or stand beside her as though labor could make them intimate again. Near midnight, he found her outside the South Service Court. You once left food outside my war room, he said. I remember. I treated it as kindness instead of expertise. You treated many things I did as kindness, because then you did not have to share authority. He absorbed the words. I cannot undo the apron. No. I can make sure no keeper's office is severed publicly before a closing count again. That protects the next woman. It should have protected you. Beatrice looked toward the lower road wall. Do not turn recognition into courtship, while 30 measures remain behind a sealed instruction. I won't. He stepped back first. The food board examined the loading order without entering the South Foundation. The trade office seal was genuine. The release time matched the advance contract. The lower road code had been used twice during the previous winter for lawful salt exchange. This third use carried one difference. The custody field did not name a wagon master, gate officer, or receiving store. It named only internal transfer, Orson said. That phrase can describe staging before external collection. Where is staging recorded? Beatrice asked. No separate staging ledger had yet been found. The board ordered the lower road perimeter, exterior gate seals, and subfloor load arms inventoried before any opening. At dawn, the south gate's outer wax remained intact. The wagon drivers had never crossed it. Yet, the internal foundation scale beneath the lower road point carried a fresh 30-measure load entry. The entry had been made before Beatrice's hearing, and the weight was still registered somewhere beneath Harvestmoon Granary. Beatrice refused to let the lower road point be opened until the people placed last on Harvestmoon's ration list controlled the public inventory. The food board met at the South Foundation before dawn. Lucan remained behind the witness line. Orson Calder stood with the trade records, loading instruction, and 30-measure foundation entry under neutral seal. Trained measurers will operate the scales, Beatrice said. Household representatives will choose the collection basins, hear every weight, and hold the tally copies. Orson remained composed. Hunger does not certify technical competence. No. It certifies who bears the cost when technical offices close their doors. The two household representatives selected 4 mothers from the pending appeal tier to stand beside the weighing rail. Nobles could observe behind them. None would touch a seal, scale, or load arm. Lucan looked toward Beatrice. "Do you want your keys returned before this begins? My suspension has not been resolved. I can restore temporary access. You can return metal. You cannot make an unfinished judgment safe by asking me to carry it again." He lowered his hand. "The board leads," he said. "Not the Crown." Orson objected. "The lower road point falls under trade custody granted by royal authority. Then royal authority can surrender control of this inspection." Lucan placed the lower road access seal under food board custody and withdrew his sole opening privilege. Beatrice did not call it forgiveness. The South Foundation's internal load arm still carried 30 grain measures. A second exterior arm registered the same load within 1/4 measure. Certified stones confirmed both accessible mechanisms remained inside tolerance. "The load exists," one mother said. "A load exists," Beatrice corrected. "We have not identified its contents." The outer south gate remained sealed and had never admitted the trade wagons. An internal staging hatch lay beneath the granary floor, outside every storage chamber but inside the old Foundation system. Its lock bore the second expansion project code. Its custody book contained no current key holder. Orson examined the entry. An internal transfer could be staged without assigning a wagon master until collection. Then, which office remained responsible before collection? The trade office. Which office title? The field was blank. No receipt, handover, or staging acknowledgement named a responsible office. The food board voted to open the internal hatch. Lucan did not vote. A neutral mason removed the facing plate after every screw and wax line was recorded. Cold air moved through the gap. Stone steps descended beneath the South Foundation. No one entered immediately. Weighted lines measured the floor. Calibrated rods checked the walls. The route matched the old lower road dimensions in the trade key, though the public operating plan showed no staging corridor. Orson stood at the threshold. A lawful trade route emitted from a public plan is not automatically concealed stock. "No," Beatrice said. "So we count before we name it." The mothers entered behind the measurers with duplicate tally boards. Beatrice followed only after the board granted witness access. She carried no keys and touched no evidence. Lucan stayed above. The corridor ended at 6 iron-bound transfer bins built into a loading wall. Their outer doors faced the sealed south gate. Their inner feed channels ran beneath the granary. Each bin bore a trade reserve mark. None bore a household reserve deduction tag. The first bin was opened under divided custody. Grain filled it to the marked line. By the fourth, one mother's hands shook around the tally board. "This was beneath us while our children left with empty cloths," Orson answered evenly. "Committed trade reserve remains pack property until delivery. Its presence does not prove the commitment was unlawful." "Correct," Beatrice said. "Keep weighing." All 6 bins were emptied into certified floor containers, 30 grain measures. The amount matched the internal Foundation load, the 3 trade commitments, and the household discrepancy. It did not establish who reused the old reserve figure or why the priority schedule had been imposed. Lucan descended only after the board invited him. "I allowed them to call this missing while it remained under my granary. You allowed one office to define what counted as available," Beatrice said. "That is how hunger became administrative." He faced the mothers. "The 30 measures returned to household reserve now." Beatrice stopped him. "No. These women led the count. The food board will decide emergency release after the trade obligations, household threshold, and ration claims are entered together. You do not repair unilateral power by using it in my favor." Lucan stepped back. "Then the board decides." The mothers signed the 30-measure tally. On the loading wall behind the emptied bins, one narrow door remained. It carried no trademark. When the last bin moved, its latch became visible. Beside it hung ration priority tokens, full portion, reduced portion, and denied issue sorted by household oath standing. The lowest bundle carried the names from Beatrice's private ration book. The food board sealed the narrow door before anyone called the ration tokens proof of Orson Calder's guilt. Beatrice stood beside the mothers who had counted the 30 measures. A token shows a system was prepared. It does not show who ordered each denial. Orson's expression remained controlled. Then, preserve the room before hunger turns records into revenge. For once, Beatrice said, we agree. The hidden door opened under divided custody. Beyond it lay no treasure chamber and no second pile of grain. It held a narrow allocation office built into the loading wall. Ration tokens, duplicate household rolls, trade schedules, and a speaking tube to the ration desk. Lucan remained outside until the food board invited him in. He wore no opening seal and issued no technical order. The first duplicate roll matched the public household list. The second did not. Families with pending appeals had been shifted to reduced or denied issue before the shortage hearing. Beside each name stood a column labeled Loyalty Recovery. One mother gripped the tally board. What does that mean? Orson answered. Households receiving emergency grain while behind on oath service were expected to complete winter obligations before full restoration. You tied food to obedience. I tied limited reserve to pack stability. Beatrice opened the trade schedule. You reduced household availability first, then used the reduction to justify this schedule. The trade commitments secured salt, medicine, and lamp oil, Orson said. Without them, winter deaths would have risen. That may justify trade. It does not justify counting committed grain as gone while keeping its location and ration effect outside the household ledger. 30 measures were reclassified into internal trade custody. The same unverified reserve figure was reused. Ration priority tiers were imposed before a fresh physical count. The public tables were supplied as though the committed grain had already left Harvestmoon. The harvest was weak, and trade goods were necessary. But the appearance of immediate emptiness had been manufactured. Lucan faced Orson. Under what authority did you create loyalty recovery? The granary master may preserve order during constrained issue. Preserve order, not condition a child's ration on household obedience. Orson's voice remained level. You approved the trade authority. You accepted my reserve certifications. You permitted noble, only witness plans. I used the power your office gave me. Lucan turned toward the waiting families. He is right about my part. He moved the hearing to the Granary court. Before more than 80 families, Lucan read the findings himself. Beatrice Fenlow breached procedure for 8 measures. She recorded 6 measures of unapproved meals and retained 2 measures of sweepings without final release. That finding remains. Beatrice did not lower her eyes. Her breach did not create the 30-measure discrepancy. Those measures remained inside Harvestmoon under trade custody while the household ledger treated them as unavailable. The ration tiers then used that manufactured appearance of scarcity to reward oath standing and punish pending appeals. Orson was suspended from granary authority, pending judgment. His records and seals entered neutral custody. He was not condemned for theft the evidence had not proved. The food board divided the 30 measures between emergency household reserve and trade obligations necessary for medicine. Beatrice did not choose every household herself. She made the system capable of choosing without hiding anyone. The certified apron was brought from divided custody, so its knots could be closed against the witnessed count. Lucan stepped toward it, then stopped. Who should complete the closure? The last certified keeper, the scale witness said. Unless she refuses. Beatrice took the apron beneath witness restriction. The harvest grain collected from the floor and channels was weighed into the final reconciliation. As the last figures balanced, the silver-gold kernels ceased pressing toward the open knots. They did not crown her. They did not name Orson. They settled when the measure was no longer unfinished. Beatrice closed the final knot and placed the apron into evidence herself. Lucan's voice lowered. "Your office can be restored. My name must be restored. The office is my choice. What do you choose? A permanent Harvestmoon food board, household observers with equal access to every winter count, no loyalty test attached to hunger, and the next keeper elected from certified granary workers, not appointed by the crown alone. And you? I will serve 1 term as the board's first elected chair. I will not return as the woman expected to repair every hidden failure alone." Lucan surrendered the royal power to close a winter inventory without household signatures. He restored Beatrice's salary for the period of wrongful public suspension and entered his own failure into the pack record. Weeks later, he came to the food board chamber carrying a meal in 2 plain bowls. "You used to leave food outside my war room," he said. "I remember. I thought bringing this might repay something. It cannot. I know." She looked at the man who had finally learned that feeding someone did not give him ownership of her mercy. "Sit," she said. "You may share the meal. Is that forgiveness?" "No. It is supper." Lucan sat across from her without crown or command. Beatrice chose the distance between their hands, and when she narrowed it, she did so because the choice belonged to her.